Hi, Ambassador Bolton. Pleasure to welcome you back to the program. Thank you very much for making the time.
Glad to be with you.
I have a number of questions about Canada-U.S. relations and defense spending in particular, but I did want to start on the situation in California because the images are certainly very prolific at this point. What, in your estimation, is motivating the president's decision to send in the National Guard and now the Marines as well?
Well, I think primarily he was looking for a political fight because he thinks it will benefit him with his base. Conservatives in America believe in federalism. They think that responsibility should be carried out by the lowest level of government possible, closest to the people. So in law enforcement matters, normally that means the mayor of the city of Los Angeles, the governor of California, with the federal government intervening only as a last resort. Obviously, that's not the way Trump approached it. So he's not following conservative principles here. He's doing this for political reasons.
Is he getting the political fight that you say he wants?
Yes, and I think Governor Newsom and the mayor of Los Angeles have kind of taken his bait and risen to the fight, which may benefit them politically as well. I mean, this could be a circumstance where the principal protagonists are benefited politically, but the country itself is not.
And what do you think the potential ramifications of that are?
Well, I think it's going to lead to more partisanship and division inside the country, and I think Trump will be the primary beneficiary of it because most Americans really don't believe you should come into the country illegally, and that's how this is going to be portrayed.
And just very quickly, is the desire for a political fight on Trump's part about distracting from other controversies he finds himself in, particularly around, for example, Elon Musk?
Oh, I think that's right. I think Trump is a master at shifting people's attention away from one problem by creating another somewhere else, and this is proven to be very timely from that perspective.
So I want to ask, as I promised, about Canada-U.S. because there are a number of developments on that front here. And in particular, I have to say, like, behind the scenes here in Ottawa, the speculation is rampant that some sort of trade arrangement, economic and security arrangement with the U.S., with Donald Trump, this White House, is going to be announced imminently, like in the coming days, perhaps in the coming weeks ahead of the G7. It felt like yesterday's announcement from the federal government to increase defense spending to finally hit that NATO target this year, 5 years ahead of schedule, is part and parcel of that. Do you think that kind of a promise is necessary in order to get some kind of deal with the White House?
Well, I've heard similar speculation, and it's probably worth what you paid for it. It is a sore point for many Americans, not just Donald Trump, that going back to Barack Obama, who called NATO allies who didn't hit the 2% target free riders. So I think it's important to do. I think it's important for all of our defenses to move it up, and if that's part of a deal. That I could see that coming. But remember, Trump has also said that defense spending should rise to 5% of gross domestic product. So everybody, including the United States, has still got a long way to go.
On the prospect of a so-called deal with Donald Trump, I think from what Canadians have been saying to me, viewers have been saying to me, like, the primary question they have is how much can you trust one at this point, considering, as you know, there's a trade arrangement in place, a free trade agreement that these tariffs, the imposition of these tariffs have now contravened on multiple instances. Do you think a so-called deal with Donald Trump, in the way we traditionally understand a deal, is possible?
No, I think that is a risk. I think what Trump wants more than anything else is to be able to announce that he's got a deal that solves the problem. Now, whether it does or not is anybody's guess. You know, he announced with great fanfare about a month ago now, I think, a trade deal with the United Kingdom. Mm-hmm. But that trade deal has still not been implemented. The tariff rates today are the same as they were the day he announced that. So a lot depends on whether this agreement is a 3-page memorandum of understanding, or really it turns out to be a very detailed fixing of the problem that Trump himself caused. So that's one reason I think it's premature, based on the speculation, to break out the champagne. I think there could still be a long way to go.
And you frequently also, in our conversations, referenced sort of the, I guess, justification or the rationale that Trump has behind the imposition of tariffs, and reminded us that it's not something he's often wavered from. Like, is there a world in which, it doesn't feel like there is, I should say, a world in which all of a sudden he says, you know what, no tariffs on Canada because we have some sort of arrangement?
Yeah, that I feel pretty comfortable saying is never going to happen.
Right.
I mean, it is also important to note that there's litigation going on in the United States that questions the legal basis of many of the significant tariffs that Trump has put into place, again, since he took office. And that could have a very profound impact. Canada would have to look at what that balance might be, because rushing to a deal before that is finally resolved in the Supreme Court could make a big difference.
The president will also be in attendance at the G7 next week, which will take place in Canada. You were at the last one with President Trump that took place in Canada. We've spoken about your writing on that, and sort of the pretty significant events, at least from a Canadian perspective, that occurred between then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and President Trump during that meeting. What do you think, or how important do you think this series of meetings next week will be?
Well, I think it's interesting. It's being held in Kananaskis. I was at that G7 meeting too, and that went quite well. We developed a Canadian-U.S. idea to stop international trafficking in weapons and materials of mass destruction. Worked really the way a G7 should. I think this is going to be a test of the personal relationship between Prime Minister Carney and President Trump. As I've said before, Trump didn't like Justin Trudeau, and that is, in effect, sums up his view of U.S.-Canada relations during the period that Trudeau was in power. He seems to be off to a better start with Mark Carney. We'll see if that can continue through this G7 summit. That would be a good outcome if it were sustained.
The countries that are in attendance, many of them, vis-a-vis the imposition of tariffs and the sort of change in posture under President Trump of the United States from a foreign policy perspective, have talked more about relying less. Our own Prime Minister has said the relationship as we knew it, particularly around economic interdependence, is over. Do you think that kind of discussion that is happening among allies will make things awkward, given that the person they're talking about, the country they're talking about, is a part and parcel of these meetings?
Well, I think it's a mistake to think that these tariffs are going to be lasting, or that what Trump is doing reflects a real redirection of American policy. I think this is aberrational behavior. I don't think people who voted for Trump in the November 2024 election realized this was what they were voting for. I think as people see the impact of the tariffs, they grow ever more unpopular in the United States. And I think drawing conclusions about the next 100 years based on a 4-year term by Donald Trump is a big mistake for everybody.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. I'm out of time. I appreciate your time as always. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thanks for having me.